we were looking at price elasticity or demand. We looked at what is price elasticity or demand, the formula for price elasticity or demand, and then we looked at through a numerical example and how do we calculate price elasticity or demand. Now we want to interpret the price elasticity or demand. Like we saw, the mathematical value of price elasticity or demand is negative because of the law of demand. We already discussed this, that the value that you get turns out to be negative because of the negative relationship between quantity demanded and price. We go back. We saw when we calculated in this numerical example, price elasticity of demand was minus 1.2, and we said it's negative due to law of demand. Now, when interpreting price elasticity or demand, we ignore the minus sign and only look at the absolute value of price elasticity or demand. And by absolute value, we mean the number itself, ignoring the sign, right? So whenever we're interpreting price elasticity or demand, we'll just ignore the negative sign and only look at the absolute value magnitude of price elasticity or demand, i.e. the number itself, ignoring the sign. Because the minus sign is mainly a consequence of the law of demand. So ignoring the minus sign, when we want to interpret the PED value to quantify how responsive quantity demanded is to change in price, we'll ignore the minus sign. Because like we said, the goal is we want to measure how much quantity demanded changes when price changes. We already know that when price increases, quantity demanded decreases due to the law of demand. But we want to quantify the magnitude of this change, and for this we'll just ignore the minus sign and look at the absolute value, right? Because like we said, when price increases, QD goes down, but by how much does it go down? That's what we want to quantify, right? That's the whole goal. We want to measure how much. So the negative sign is just telling us the direction of change, which follows from the law of demand. So we'll ignore the minus sign and just look at the number itself to quantify the relationship. So when we look at the absolute value of price elasticity or demand, it takes values between 0 to infinity. And since it's taking such a wide range of values from 0 all the way to infinity, so then we want to ask ourselves, how do economists characterize products according to their price elasticity or demand? In this, we'll divide it into two types of cases: frequently encountered cases and special cases. We'll first look at two frequently encountered cases, the first being price elastic demand. Now, price elastic demand is where the absolute value of price elasticity or demand is greater than 1. And what would this mean is that the percentage change in quantity demanded is more than the percentage change in price. Because like we said, when price increases, quantity demanded goes down, but the question arises by how much. So if it is elastic demand, that means that the percentage change in quantity demanded is more than the percentage change in price. So say price decreases by 5%, we know quantity demanded will go up, but it will go up by more than 5% if it's elastic demand. Say it goes up by 15%, right? So this is why precisely it's called price elastic demand, right? Elastic. Because remember, elastic means something that can stretch. So that's what we're talking about here. How much a change in price will stretch quantity demanded. If it stretches a lot like a rubber band, the good is said to have price elastic demand. And the higher the number is, the more elastic the demand is. So if the value of price elasticity or demand in absolute terms is greater than 1, we say it's elastic demand. And the higher the number is, the more elastic the demand is. And the demand curve for a good with price elastic demand is relatively flat. Because now quantity demanded responds more significantly to a change in price. If price falls, you have a large change in quantity demanded, which produces a relatively flat demand curve. So with respect to price elastic demand, it's important to remember in absolute terms, the value is greater than 1, which essentially means that the percentage change in quantity demanded is greater than the percentage change in price, which is essentially why it's called elastic demand. Because when price changes, quantity demanded stretches by a lot like a rubber band. And demand curve for such a good is going to be, for a good with price elastic demand is going to be relatively flat.